to the Warzone Amateur Hour podcast.
Okay, welcome back to the Warzone Amateur Hour podcast. This is episode 89, a week plus now immersed in Vanguard Season 4 Reloaded in our new state of the meta, and our new game modes that we claimed we played last week that we didn't and hopefully did this week. But there's a lot for us to reveal, a lot for us to discuss, a lot for us to dive into. However, before we get to the top line stuff, because we got actually a lot for this one here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn to the 10InchCowboy, who I knew actually was getting some dubs this week in the Warzone, to ask you, how was your week in the Warzone, Cowboy?
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that lively introduction. I had a good week in the Warzone this week. Definitely got a couple W's. One notable one that was just one of the more fun rounds I've had in quite some time with friend of the pod Sparks in a duo situation on Rebirth Island. It was really fun. I've mixed up my guns a little bit. I now have a new SMG that I'm rocking and rolling with that I think we're actually probably going to talk about in this episode, because I think it got a pretty significant buff there. I'm off the Marco. I don't want to touch the Marco again. I'm sick of the Marco. I don't even want to talk about guns that start with the letter M. I'm done fucking dealing with the Marco. So I'm onto a new gun, and I'm excited about it. And then I got an old favorite as my long-range weapon. So I had a good week. Yes, we did play the zombie feature Rebirth thing, which, I mean, was fun, I guess. There's a few bugs in it that we, like, kind of, it's hard to, I don't know if we're going to address those, but yeah, it was kind of a weird, not sure how much I enjoyed it, to be honest, but it was fun to mix it up. Nothing wrong with it. Kind of weird to be doing zombie shit in July in the middle of summer, but it was fun. So with that long, loose, disjointed answer, I'll ask you, how was your week in the Warzone?
Well, before I answer that, I want to come right back to it, because I don't want to hold our listeners in suspense, and I don't want to hold my breath here. I'm eager to hear, what is this new two-pronged question here? A, what is this newfound SMG love of yours? And two, were you running the Marco previously? It's interesting, all this hate coming through. I want to know a little more background on that.
So I'll answer your question with a totally different answer to something that you didn't want to know about, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't know if you're familiar with general storytelling, but typically what you do is you withhold you want to keep some mystery. You want to, keep people engaged so they don't just like listen to what the cowboy is running right off the bat, turn off the podcast before we get to our wonderful sponsors, and then they don't even hear the rest of the pod. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create some mystery here. With that being said, do you still want me to say it? Do you think we're deep enough in the episode now to where I can reveal the big reveal?
Wow, I mean, yeah, I'm just completely unfamiliar with any sort of storytelling conventions or structuring, so thank you so much for imparting this wisdom upon me. But, I guess if that info has to wait, let's make it a cliffhanger here. Let's hold on to that little question mark and keep it here, because we'll keep the audience asking what happens next. With that said, I think the first thing to talk about for my week in the Warzone is to make up for a bit of humiliation and shame that was showered upon me last week, and being outed for lying about playing the Rebirth of the Dead game mode. We made damn sure this week that we hopped into that. We ran a total of one game with it. I think we ended up getting runner-up, but ironically, it kind of was how I described it, in terms of like, yeah, I was alive, I died, I came back, I was alive. It was a lot of dying, coming back, getting vials, and then we made it to the end, and I think collectively as a team we were confused. We weren't sure, did we win, did we not? Because we saw a Warzone victory banner, but it was in red. Ultimately, we did not. I think we got second or third, but yeah, what were your thoughts on that, since you were alongside for that ride?
It was fun. I didn't really I didn't die and I didn't come back as a zombie until the very end. And then I found it incredibly frustrating trying to get the vials, which always seems to be the case when I'm a zombie. But I had fun playing it. It's fun just shredding zombies, just losers, dead losers. I like killing them, which is fun. And yeah, I'm glad that we did it. So, we're honest with ourselves on this podcast. I think there's got to be a bit of like journalistic integrity in us being the faces of this game. So I'm glad that we did it. And I'm glad that, if there's any positive to come out of this, it's that we all can agree that you're a terrible liar, which I think is something that is a good thing.
Yeah, yes, indeed. It was hard for me to hold that in. The ironic part, I was wrong there. When you asked about the darkness, I think anyone who had played it, I would have outed myself there because it is not a dark mode. It's like a weird, hazy, dusky theme going on. But I got to say, one thing that was surprising for me was it was like scarier or more intense, just the nature of Rebirth I think it suited the zombie aspect because it felt like there wasn't really anywhere safe. At one point, I was in headquarters, the proper building, literally in the bathroom on top of the shitter, with a gun in hand, just like hiding as I heard zombies all around me. It felt kind of like what I'd be doing like maybe in the real zombie apocalypse, but definitely making use of that toilet a little more. But so that was kind of fun because it like you realize there are a lot of vulnerabilities, especially when these fuckers can jump so high and stuff like that. So that was cool. I don't know. Again, like you said at the top, zombies in July, a little weird. Not really sure like what room they're reading for that, but it's out there. It's a change of pace. I did play it this week. Trust that.
Yeah, I like your point about the zombie map situation on Rebirth. How Rebirth really is suited for the zombie vibe. I'm not sure really a gameplay mode, I guess you would say. But you're right, because so much of Rebirth, you're inside a lot. And I think that there's something generally scary about the zombies when you're inside because they're just quick. They can get at you. You can't you know what I mean? So no, I just think that inside of buildings, zombies are scarier. And I think back to like the real zombie days. That was like Verdansk, Verdansk had so much wide open space. You weren't really inside of buildings a ton in Verdansk, not like you are in Rebirth, where I feel like you're constantly inside things. Total different dynamic with zombies when you're inside, which I think you're right. It definitely makes it scarier.
No, and I think you're absolutely right about indoor centered gaming being a strength of this mode, because I'm thinking like, did we have a zombie mode on Caldera? And if so, I bet it was probably a huge flop because there's just not really that element that's that present on Caldera. So I guess that part of it was fun. I've heard some mixed reviews. Some players in our community liking it, others not. You sound like what you like it, you're medium, you didn't like it. Where are you at on this? Final verdict.
I did not like it. It's not something I would do often. I think I'm passive. It's fun to mix it up with it, but it's not something I'm gonna like think about playing when I'm not on the game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you. It was kind of like we ran it once and then we're like, okay, that was good. Let's move on. One thing that is growing on me is Fortune's Keep. I'm liking that map a lot more. I think I'm starting to get my bearings a little more, my play style dialed in. Because in terms of like going back to how my week was in the Warzone, not a ton of play time, which has been consistent. But what I did do this week, which was wild, it was playing with a friend of the podcast, longtime loyal friend of the Tron and the Cowboy, Smeeden. We were playing duos, and he was like, I want a duos win on Caldera. So we dropped in that. We gritted it out. I played like shit. I had 0 kills. I was along for the ride, and to Smeeden's credit, he clutched it out incredibly. We get a win on Caldera. So then we hop over to Rebirth. We did a fill with, I think, 2 random dudes it was. We ended up getting a fucking victory there. So we had 2 wins in a row. Then we're like, well, let's try it one more time on Fortune's Keep duos. And we got a win there. So we've never done that before. We had 3 straight wins, 1 on each map. I did kind of get that joy that I had been missing. I felt pretty locked in by the end of it. I was running the M13 throughout. And actually the Type 100 really back on that for my SMG. Feeling pretty good. So that was kind of a cool thing that happened there, though. I can't sadly take much credit for that Caldera win.
I'm quickly Googling, what does Dr. Disrespect call like his, like, is it the triple threat challenge?
Yes, and I was actually talking about that to Smeeden, but I don't know when he does that, if it's maps. It's more so I feel like team configurations, like he's like win on solo, win on duos, which we almost had that. We had a duos win, a quad win, didn't get the trios fit in there, but yeah, it was a little bit of a triple threat.
Like if he's playing with Z Lane, or what happens is it'll be like they'll do like a 30 win dub, and then they'll go to a trio where they'll like, but I don't need to get into the details of it, but essentially, yeah, they do like different rankings like that. But I was just thinking, like, that's a fucking move right there, is to get a win on each map. That's a fun little thing.
I mean, I haven't had a freaking win on Caldera since maybe
your kids
not even
were born?
Yeah, maybe not this calendar year. So that was an interesting experience. We were really playing like slow, conservative, had some decent circle pulls, learned some hard lessons there about being vulnerable, started to get eager as these guys were about to get gate kept. I moved out of my spot, got punished for it. But yeah, the weapon diversity was definitely on display. Does seem like this latest NZ41 nerf is sticking, like it didn't feel nearly as good. And your KG seems like that's the move for especially the big map, because you got that 3x to 6x scope, which is like a game changer on Caldera. So yeah.
Yeah, I have the long range weapon that I'm running, which I think I mentioned last week and the week before, is the KGM40. I love that gun. It's a laser beam. It really is just a laser beam, and it used to be a laser beam that didn't quite hit as hard as the other large ARs, or LMGs, but it now has just enough power to where it's really it's up there. It's a KGM40 is a legit long range weapon right now.
Yeah, it doesn't waver. Decent mag size, damn good damage range, bullet velocity, all that. It's all some, analysis. But before we talk about that, it brings us to our next point, which was we've seen a lot of weapons tuning we saw last week for Season 4 Reloaded. But they weren't done. This week, which they're calling it, a lot of the community was calling it a surprise, not so much patch, but a surprise weapons tuning update, is they had the patch, the weekly patch, on August 3rd. And yes, that brought a whole new round of weapons tuning, pretty significant. The NZ41 at the top of the list had its headshot multiplier decreased slightly. They said the shot deviation, which was increased, which I think that's really the most notable thing. If you're out there running the NZ41, you've likely noticed that since this patch, it seemed that did knock it off the perch, like definitively. It is no longer the absolute de facto meta, which the KGM40 was also received a very, very minor nerf, but now it sits like atop the rankings on the list of the long range. But the high level other updates are the Kilo had a bit of a nerf, the Marco 5, the Blixen, the Desert Eagles, the VLK Rogue, which I guess was out of hand in the middle of this patch, as it was one of those guns they kind of discovered was like dangerous that people didn't know. That was addressed. The Armaguera had some slight nerfs, and the Volk had a very minor nerf. So they did buff, though, the Vargo S and the Whitley, which has gotten like buffs and buffs and buffs, and everyone's kind of saying like if there's ever a time for the Whitley to be on the map is now. I haven't heard that's the case, but yeah, that's the state of the meta. So I think we've left our audience in suspense enough. I want to hear now. Let's get this answer to the original opening question about your SMG of choice and where you're at with the meta.
Absolutely. But first, a word from our sponsor.
All right. Yes, indeed. As you heard last week, it is smooth sack summer here in the States, in this hemisphere. Maybe smooth sack winter if you're, on the other half of the globe. And if you want to dive headfirst into that, you're going to need to get your tools from manscaped.com. As we've talked about, the Performance Package 4.0 has everything you need to prepare that summer bod. Inside that package, you're going to find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, the Crop Reviver ball toner, the Performance Boxer briefs, and a travel bag, the Shed, which they cleverly named, to hold all of your goodies.
I really like that name, The Shed, for all of the tools that they give you. But yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? We love Manscaped. They've been good to us. We love their products. I feel like they're innovators and revolutionaries in terms of shaving your ball sack and keeping it in contention for some action.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't matter where you're from. But if you're out there this summer, if you're like the Cowboy is today, you got a barbecue heading up. You know, you might have the perfect haircut upstairs, but you better make sure downstairs is just ready to rock and roll the same. And, you know, we've talked about the crop preserver, ball deodorant. Well, it helps you stay cool in the heat. It has a soothing aloe vera formula, and it's the best in the business for below the waist freshness. And it's a clear drying formula that's going to keep you looking good while smelling good.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your point, like I'm at my gigantic ranch today. I'm doing a huge barbecue, and I'm going to be working with some giant flames. You know, I don't know, it could get a little out of control when I'm throwing like raw gasoline on it to really, you know, like sear the meats that I'm cooking. And, you know, one wrong move, if I wasn't Manscaped, one wrong move and all of a sudden it lights it all on fire down there. You got to be very careful. So it's almost a safety kind of concern at this point for me, which I'm now taking care of. So I don't have to worry about burning the hair off my balls from a barbecue tonight, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, I'm excited that that's not going to happen for you either. And if you're excited about anything you've heard, you want to get your hands on some Manscaped products, well, of course, you need to go to manscaped.com. But more importantly, you're going to need to use the code WAH, as in Warzone Amateur Hour, and that's going to give you 20% off and free shipping. Again, head to manscaped.com. Use the code WAH and you're going to get 20% off and free shipping, and you're going to be ready to head on in to smooth sack summer or winter or whatever season you find yourself in.
It's always smooth sack season.
All right, so yes, after teasing the answers in the build-up, making our audience wait again, almost revealing it there, and then now having heard from our sponsors, are we ready to reveal? I mean, one thing here that you've inadvertently done is built this up quite a bit, so I hope you can deliver, but the floor is yours, Cowboy, to talk about where you're at with the meta, with this weapons tuning, and your arsenal.
So as I said, I'm loving the KGM40, and it's been a great longer range weapon for me. What I've had issues with in the past is that the SMG game is harder for me. It's not, my gameplay doesn't really I get killed. Let's just be honest here. I usually get killed in short range skirmishes. So in choosing a weapon that I want to use in the short range, do you see how I'm just dragging this on right now? Okay, so it's not that big of a deal, but yes, my new weapon that I'm using is the Armaguerra. I have fully switched to it. I have it fully leveled. I'm having a fantastic time with it. It's accurate. I love its movement speed. It's kind of reminds me of a sharper MP40 maybe, and a little less range, but kind of just easier to shoot and maneuver with. I'm enjoying it. Have you tried the Armaguerra?
Well, you know, it's not like we record a weekly podcast and I share thoughts on weapons. And last week specifically, you asked me, what was a gun you felt an instant connection with other than the Vargo? And I listed none other than the fucking Armaguerra. I am an Armaguerra fan, my friend.
Oh, okay. So are you running it?
I'm actually not. Which
Wow.
Well, I think that was unlocked, or that was locked behind the old, shackles, right? Before they unleashed it here on the earth with the most recent Reloaded, I believe, which is why I didn't have it in my lineup, but I was always prioritizing it as ground loot. Since they've done the patch, I'm so set on running restock that I rarely run my overkill class. So I actually haven't built a loadout with the Armaguerra, but I usually prioritize it because you can find a blue one or better, that's ground loot on damn near most maps in most games. So while I don't have it in my loadout, I definitely will go out and build that, but I look for it and I love it.
So you're just full restock these days. Oh, on top of overkill, you prefer restock.
I've been running the restock. I'm a restock snapshot, beta cuck, find them where they're at, light them up for the team. I'm a team player, baby.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's cool.
Well, yes, indeed. But speaking of something you mentioned, a word that has become very sacred in the world of Warzone over the year, I should say, since it went away. And maybe it's a weird nostalgia fondness that seems to, really be present in gaming, especially. People love to look at old titles and be like, those were the days, even though back in the day, they probably bitched just as much about the old Call of Duties as they do about Warzone. But that said, one word that went trending this week that was lit up, I think, on Twitter across the board, especially in the Warzone community, obviously. And that word was Verdansk. And that is, there seems to be a movement among players here, like calling out, trying to get Activision to embrace or potentially give us a return of Verdansk as we're in the sunset period of Warzone here. The months of Warzone being the only real Call of Duty game in town are dwindling as, Modern Warfare 2 is creeping closer and Warzone 2. And they feel like they want Warzone to come back. All you really had to do was tweet it out and it was getting likes, getting replies. But what are your thoughts on the potential for this?
I think the first thing that strikes me is that it's so interesting that this actually, I think, has weight behind it. If enough people in the community cry for Verdansk, I think that the developers have to consider somehow putting it back in there if it's possible. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think this isn't like some like this effort isn't, man, I'm what am I trying to say here? It's possible. You know what I mean? Like we could actually see them do this because of the community's pull, which is fantastic. I would love it. I mean, I would love to hop back in on Verdansk, and I feel like it would bring some of that childlike enthusiasm that, we used to get for the game. And there's like, man, when they used to do fucking updates and when they released the new map, when Rebirth came out, like when there were massive changes like that, it was like, holy shit, we got to get in there right now. Like, where is everybody?
Yeah, stadium's open. We got to go check it out.
Yeah, and now it's like, if they brought Verdansk back, I feel like it'd be a little bit like that, and it'd be really exciting and fun. So I am all about it. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Well, before I give my thoughts, the one kind of, pouring cold water on this idea, which is, what people in the community tend to do. They got to give us some perspective. Like one of the biggest Call of Duty accounts out there that follows it is Charlie Intel. They made a point like, tamp down your enthusiasm, because what they believe is that these updates are prepped, like Season 5 is prepped like maybe even a month ago, or they're already working on it now. So this isn't just something like, oh, they're hearing the community calling out, let's make it happen. Let's get it in there for Season 5, which is, probably only several weeks away. It seems like these seasons are rotating so quickly. So it's not just a matter of like bringing it back. There's also, I guess they've said it might bloat up, the download size of the game's already fucking massive. It could be complicated with there. So we need to say it, just because they want it and there is the appetite for it. I don't know if it's coming, but in terms of like, if I would want it, absolutely. Like, I'm not a big Caldera guy, and for fairness, I don't think we were huge Verdansk guys in its old heyday, but I think it was like we didn't realize what a good map it was till we got forced away from it. And I do think we've said throughout is there's all these quality of life changes and additions and things that have been proved about the game since we've left Verdansk, that to revisit it with like these new things going on, like the fire things you can send up the zip line, or too many things to think about. I think that would be cool. It'd be good to revisit that. And as a way of signing off of Verdansk or on Warzone Original, like with the way we started, we talk about storytelling there. That's some awesome, like, circular, get us to where we started, full circle kind of story arc going on there.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool, especially if it was the original iteration of Warzone, like when the stadium wasn't open and like, the old map, the old OG map.
Yep, holding up and, police station or any of that crap. With the skills we got now, obviously the player base collectively is better. So I don't know if we'd
just
fare.
dropping into prison. Oh man, I would love it.
Promenade West, come on.
I hate you. Loved Promenade. I fucking hated Promenade. You were always
Hills,
a Promenade
baby.
guy. I like
but
the hills.
that brings us to our next point, which is you got to imagine the folks, after hearing the news this week, the folks at Activision and Warzone, they got to be eager for something that's going to get players back to the game, because there was some pretty staggering information that came out this week. It was a Call of Duty earnings call here where they kind of peel back the layers for the old, shareholders, so to speak, but it obviously sheds a bunch of light on what's going on with the game. And the biggest takeaway was the monthly total active users. So they refer to that as a MAU. And they said at the end of March 2021, Call of Duty, including Warzone, had 150 million monthly active users.
That's a lot of people.
That was so March 2021, 150 million. But as of this most recent earnings report, that number had fallen from 150 million all the way down to 94 million, which 94 million in itself, huge. But to think they've lost over 50 million active players, clearly
that's like almost 40% or something like that, right? That's a lot.
It's a staggering drop. And, full disclosure, as we've been honest on the podcast, we've cooled off. Obviously, anecdotally, our friends have walked away, but now this is like proof here that something's going on. They need to shake it up. So maybe they might be, having these poor bastards in the build the game out, like working double time to get Verdansk in there, if that's what's going to happen. But yeah, what do you think about this pretty bombshell news?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I think that, of course, yes, all the things that you just mentioned, people aren't playing the game as much. I think another big part of that, too, is that obviously this game, March 2021, we were still kind of in the throes of, proper COVID and isolation and quarantine, that it had been a year since, March 2020. And that's when, this thing really exploded. So, and I'm sure that they're saying March 2021 because that was at the height. That I'm sure was like when it was fucking firing. So I would imagine that, of course, those numbers are naturally going to come down because people aren't stuck inside, they're not playing video games as much. But I do think that it's a combination of both. I mean, you can't lose 40% of your player base and just say, oh, that was just because of the circumstance. No, you need to address what is going on and why people have walked away big time.
I think that's a fair point, that added context of I don't think they'd ever get close to what they were at, when Warzone first launched, it was in its peak. Everyone was locked down. Everyone was fucking playing this thing, checking it out. But in terms of what's changed other than the pandemic, I don't feel like it's a competition thing. There's not been a big, the COD killer's out. Fortnite's been around since the beginning. Apex, that. PUBG, they've all seen their own updates aside. Battlefield was a massive fucking flop, so we know that's not where these players are going.
Yeah, whatever happened with that? I remember what happened with Battlefield. I remember seeing that, the teaser of it. Did it just not catch on?
It's still going on, but it's fucking garbage by all accounts. I mean, I saw something which was my takeaway from the beta originally, is they called it running or walking simulator, because I felt like so much of that game was just traversing on foot, and it was just a mismatch. I don't feel like the game just didn't have an identity. It didn't really know what it was. So it's failed. It's still going on, though. I saw, some of the big content creators still revisit it, like Jack Frags, even today, I think, put out a video about a new Battlefield update, but just didn't have the pizzazz. Halo Infinite didn't have a battle royale and is totally flopped as well. It sounds like there's a ton of issues with that game and how they've supported it, and maybe it was rushed and nothing really new has come out since it went. So I don't think players are. My question, I guess, about all this is where have those fucking 50 million players gone? Is it like you said, they're just not playing games, or they've moved on to Fall Guys? Or
I was going to say a little game called Fall Guys that's not as stressful. I think. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that if this is a breakdown of. The first question is how many people just kind of stopped playing video games because they weren't stuck inside anymore. I think that's the first question, and I don't even know. I have no fucking idea like what the answer to that is. Maybe it's 10%, 20%. I don't know. I have no idea. But then like how many people just stopped playing video games or went to a different video game, I guess is the right way to put it. And I would say that that's a pretty big, portion of it too. I mean, monthly active user means I'm sure that they have to log in at least once, in that monthly period.
Yep.
If you're not playing Warzone once a month, you really are out of touch with the game. Sadly, that means
True.
that you have no fucking idea what's going on.
Yeah, and even though they added that feature where it says a recommended gun on the loadout, I don't think that's gonna save somebody. Yeah, you take a month off of Warzone,
and then you
it is
drop
a
into
beast.
some sweat lobby without the proper meta, you're just gonna get slaughtered.
Yeah, and you don't know what's going on. You're like, what is this new fucking map? Anyways.
Yeah, I can't hit him. Oh, I'm headshotting him with my car. What's going on?
That was a headshot. But that kind of brings us here. We've having a lot of, we talk about thematic storytelling, all this. We got a lot of threads here that have been leading to the same kind of through line here, which is something we've talked about week in and week out lately, is the anticipation for Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 is just building and building, and the pressure is insane. And you look at now these numbers, we also have a whole financial component, because you lose 50 million active players, goddamn well you're losing money. And Activision now being purchased by Microsoft, like, they need to be making some fucking money here, although that's still not official. But it's kind of bringing me to, like, the stakes are so high, and the months ahead, like, we had talked about the build up to the Godzilla reveals, all these events. That's fucking, that's chicken scratch compared to like the pressure of what happens, when Modern Warfare drops. You better hold your fucking breath. Same with Warzone 2.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. Like the pressure, the stakes couldn't be higher. They basically, they have the opportunity to recapture what they know is possible of people that used to play the game. If it's there's a scenario in which they get back to 150 million or more, right? That's one route. The other route is that like the people that are continuing to play and it stays the same, and it's kind of like I think that's obviously a total failure if they stay at 90 whatever million, because they've just lost such you know what I mean? If there's not like massive growth with this release, I think it's a for sure failure on all counts, and they're fucked.
Yeah, I think like exactly like success. That's not even a success in this context. Like they need to fucking knock this out of the park. They need to revive what's going on, get players en masse back to the game, excited. Get that fucker #1 trending on Twitch for the game going on. Because all the Warzone players, not all of them, but so many of them now, they're not exclusive to Warzone. A lot of times they don't even sometimes play it like in a day. So got a lot of stuff coming up down the pipeline, and who's going to be there for every step of the way. That is us here, Tron and the Cowboy, on the Warzone Amateur Hour podcast. So fear not, we will be there with the news, all of that. But speaking of news and leaks and rumors, a team, or a franchise, I should say, that's very beloved by the 10-Inch Cowboy, that is the Los Angeles Rams. This past week, they actually got their hands on Modern Warfare 2. They had a sneak preview event Activision did for the players. And as you can expect, when you get a player, that are the caliber of the Rams, at least intelligence-wise, they leaked some shit about the game. So there was some leaks, some screenshots,
wow. You
some
mean
stuff.
The World Championship, Los Angeles World Champions over here? This guy, Tron, lives in Los Angeles and roots for the Niners. Like who does that? But continue, please.
In fairness, the Rams weren't even fucking here when I moved here. But anyways, yes.
Well, technically, they were here when you were born in Southern California.
And then they left, just like my estranged father. Oh, never mind.
This is not a sports or therapeutic podcast. Let's get back to the action here.
But yes. So the main gist of that is we got some leaks, some menu screenshots, but the biggest thing I think was leaked is there's been this debate about, there's supposed to be this DMZ mode coming to Modern Warfare 2. Actually, at first it was rumored it was going to be for Warzone, which is like an escape from Tarkov, like hardcore extraction themed game mode that they were going to be introducing with, we've talked about some of the features they rumored were like the bag features and the different types of armors, all that stuff. Well, there was a screenshot that was leaked of like they have the player cards previewing different shit about the game when you're in the menus. One of them said clearly DMZ, so it sounds like that's all but confirmed. I mean, I know you haven't played Escape from Tarkov, but what are your thoughts on the potential for like that this is going to be a real thing coming here?
Yeah, I guess I still don't know if I'm going to enjoy the game mode because it seems a little different than like the Battle Royale vibe. So I'm not sure exactly what to think of it. I'm honestly, I feel like a lost child in an adult conversation that I don't have the intellect or, ability to discuss, complicated matters, So I'm, you know what I mean? I don't know what the fuck this is, basically.
Yeah, I mean, to a large part, none of us really do. We can certainly guess, and especially those that have played Escape from Tarkov can have maybe a better idea. But my main question is, okay, if it's not like specifically tied to Warzone, it's tied to Modern Warfare 2. I feel like a huge component of this is the map. And I'd imagine it has to be a large scale, but Modern Warfare, traditionally single player, or not single player, but standalone multiplayer, those maps are small. So like, is there going to be just this behemoth DMZ map incorporated onto that, and that'll later be part of like the new Warzone 2 map? It's opening a can of worms with way more questions, I think, than answers. But that said, like, I'm eager for a hardcore kind of extraction type game mode to come to this game, especially if it gets the sweat lords away from like the shit I like. So I'm eager to learn more. But yeah, that was kind of the leaks this week. So we're going to start seeing a trickle here. And again, gameplay reveal expected next month in September.
God bless the Los Angeles Rams, right?
Yeah, it was their new addition. Bobby Wagner was like flexing about how many kills he was dropping. So some serious COD players. And randomly this week too, Kyler Murray, the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals, there was a whole analysis on Reddit about like how he performed in the NFL during free double XP weekends. Pretty funny. So definitely some passionate Call of Duty players in the NFL. As we've talked about, there's a Call of Duty themed celebration touchdown. But, speaking of sports, speaking of events, of championships, one thing last week we were super hyped about, we covered in depth, we even did a fucking video breakdown of one of the rounds, and that was the World Series of Warzone. Well, guess what? This week they revealed that the World Series of Warzone is coming back around for 2022.
Am I supposed to be excited about that? I don't fucking watch these World Series of Warzones. Like these guys
did last time, I thought.
We did. I guess we did a breakdown of one of them. I mean, I guess my question is, if I know a streamer that's in it, I'll watch it. But most of these competitive gaming leagues, I don't fucking know any of these guys. I don't have no emotional investment in these. If Dr. Disrespect was in this, I'd watch it because he's funny.
No word yet on that, but I imagine Z Laner's got to be in it for sure.
Yeah, I do like Z, but yeah. So maybe if someone piques my interest, are you into this? Do you like World of Warzone for World Series?
I'm hyped, and I mean, we've talked about you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. I think now after a year, I'm so much more familiar with a lot of these other streamers. Maybe not the biggest, the championship guys. Like I think Aiden won last week. Obviously familiar with them, but some of the smaller ones going on. But most importantly, Cowboy, we're actually going to have a pretty active member on our Discord, the Warzone Amateur Hour Discord. He's going to be taking part in the motherfucking World Series of Warzone this week. His name is McBango. He's an awesome, member of our community. I know he's a part of other Discords. I know he's not monogamous to us. Might even be part of some other Call of Duty podcast Discords. But I'm going to go ahead and fucking claim him as our own. Like, he's representing the WA. So if you're out there watching it, be rooting for McBango out there.
What's his name? McBango?
Yeah, McBango.
Mango or Bango?
McBango.
Yeah, bang. So McBango. Well, I mean, that's unbelievable that one of the amateurs like ourselves are going to be in the World Series of Warzone. I mean, look how we've grown up here. And I don't even want to address if he's in other people's Discords, other podcasts that focus on Warzone, Discords, but we will fully support him and hope he wins. And then in the post interview, he drops a fucking shout out to the Warzone Amateur Hour, baby.
That is fucking goddamn right there, Cowboy. And I said just that when he announced it on the stream that he was going to be taking part. I said to this man, I said, represent the WA. And his reply was pretty great. Trying to find it here because looks like a lot of action here going on in the Warzone Amateur Hour Discord. If you're not part of it, make sure you fucking get on there. But yes, I said to represent the WA, and he said that post-win interview will have a shout out for sure, just like you said.
Wow. We're on the same page.
But yeah, McBango by no means is an amateur. He's definitely a sweat lord, but he's got love for our community. Again, we're glad to have him on our Discord, on those discussions. We're rooting for you, McBango, if you're out there. If there's any other amateur hour enthusiasts taking part, let us know. We'll give you a shout out. I'm sure damn near, 90% of the field's probably subscribing. They're into the podcast, right?
You know what would be interesting? I'm, just thinking about this on the fly. It'd be interesting to interview McBango after this process about what the World Series of Warzone is like.
That could be something we could do. But speaking of interviewing and, speaking with our listeners and taking questions, that leads us to our final point, which is that our Warzone Amateur Hour live recording session is going to be going on only a few days after the release of the episode you are listening to now. So if you haven't already marked your calendar, please do so for August 12th. That's a Friday here in the States, 9 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to be sharing a link for y'all to be taking part. We will not be on camera, so you're not going to have the big reveal of our faces, but you will hear the live voices. Again, you'll have the opportunity to submit a question. We can't guarantee we can get to everyone, but we're excited to engage with you, our listeners, kind of give a peel behind the curtain so you could hear this one-take magic that happens on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I guess it's funny. We don't really do a lot of editing on this. We kind of just hit record and we start chatting. So this will probably be a lot like that. We just, maybe I won't be quite as prepared as I usually am, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. We hope to see you all in there. Again, that's August 12th, 9 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be starting. So again, stay tuned on our Twitter, on our Discord for the links for how you can make that happen. That, though, is going to do it for us this week on the Warzone Amateur Hour podcast. Getting back in the saddle of sorts as we stroll off into the sunset of Warzone. Perhaps that might involve a trip through Verdansk. Who knows? But again, pressure building for what's ahead. We're along for the ride, excited for what happens, and fingers crossed that they deliver.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, a lot riding on the next couple of months.
So we will talk to those of you who take part this Friday, August 12th at 9 p.m. Pacific. Otherwise, that episode will be going live as usual on Monday. We will talk to you next week for that. And as always, until then, my friends,
good luck in the gulag.